Well, other thing that popped in my head. So going back here to the Albrights, your dad was Stephen.
Steve. His dad was Steve.
His dad was Stephen.
Yeah.
But that's where the branches, I guess, as far as our connection, split, right? Because
it springs out from Albert.
From Albert. Okay.
Okay. You all are from Albert,
Mm-hmm.
and we get down. Your great grandfather, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
was Steve's brother.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We called him Uncle Billy.
Yeah.
And his name was William H. And he lived to be quite old. And when he passed on, his son Arch, who was your great grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
inherited that, or he gave it to him. I think he inherited. He willed it to him. I think. But Uncle Billy had been married before. He had been married twice. He married first an Adams. Her name was Armstead Ann Adams. And you got that part in your history, I guess, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. She was like a granddaughter of this man named Devil Bill Adams, who is a renegade of sorts. In genealogy, if you're doing genealogy and you come across somebody related to Devil Bill Adams, everybody perks up,
Yeah. Well, it's hard to get a nickname, Devil Bill.
Yeah. And it was quite a notorious. I mean, he had a big family, and just recently I've had input with part of his family, with people that and it's your family also.
Mm-hmm.
That it's Arch's, your great grandpa Arch's half sister's family. And she got in contact with me on Ancestry, I believe. And for several years, I was in contact with her off and on. And one time, several years ago, her daughter, she didn't grow up. Of course, her Uncle Billy, my Uncle Billy and your great grandfather that was also he was her great grandfather.
Yeah.
But she was from his first family of the Adams, and so she was connected with Devil Bill Adams, and that's how I got to checking into Devil Bill, even though I myself was not connected. But anyway, I communicated with her a lot. She was interested she didn't know much about her Albright family, but she grew up mostly in the Georgetown area, stamping ground. I don't know. She'd married several times, but she was not. She's had one daughter who lived in Tennessee, and when she got old, after she'd been married maybe 3 times to different people, she moved to Tennessee to be close to a daughter into an assisted living facility, and got to be 97 years old. And she called me one day because she knew I lived in the Broadhead area, and I'd been in contact with her son before anyway, and she was asking me about if I knew who was in charge of the Piney Grove Cemetery down here. And I told her I thought it was Brian Bussell, and she said, well, she had been thinking, of course she was old enough to be thinking about where she's going to be buried anyway. She said she'd been thinking, that her family was Broadhead people, even though she had not ever lived here herself.
Yeah.
And she would like to be buried at Broadhead. Her mother and her grandmother were both buried at Piney Grove. But it had been like her grandmother was in 1920. And anyway, she wanted, and so she told me what she wanted, and I said, well, I'll check into it for you and see what I can find out. If there's any lots there, she said, I don't know if there's any place close to my mother or my grandmother or whatever. I'd like, that's one of the things I'd like to do. She says, I've got a husband or two I could be buried by, but I just really like to be buried by my mother, she said. And so I checked it out for her and found out that there's this, her grandmother, who was named Peachy Albright, who was, Uncle Billy's daughter by his first wife, and who was a half-sister to Arch, your great-grandmother. Her name was Peachy. And she had died in 1920, and she was married to she had died in childbirth, and there'd been her husband's name was something Kreiser. I forgot. I don't know if I knew his first name or not, but his name was Kreiser, and they lived in West Virginia. And how he got her back to Broadhead, I don't know. But the cemetery down here, it just started in 1918. This is what I found out from Brian from the history of Piney Grove, that it had been started by A.E. Albright, who was Archibald, who was also a brother to Albert.
Yeah.
But anyway, the cemetery had been started in 1918, and in 1920, Peachy died, and her husband bought, and then you had, you couldn't just buy 1 or 2 lots, you had to buy a package of 10. I don't know if it's a package of 10 or 12. 10, I believe. You had to buy 10 lots. A lot for 10 people. And he bought lots for 10 people. And there hadn't been anybody buried in those lots but just Peachy and her daughter, who was the mother of the one in Tennessee that was looking for a place, So she was just overjoyed to find out that she could be buried there.
Yeah.
But she said, I don't know what my daughter's going to say. She lives in Tennessee, and said, I don't want to go against what because that was her only child, was this daughter, and she said, I don't know what my daughter's going to say. And so it turns out, when she finally got up enough nerve to tell her daughter, and it was okay with her daughter. Her daughter said she wanted her mother to be wherever she wanted to be. And so anyway, Debbie Brown, who does genealogy a lot with me, and I told her the story. She wanted us to go to, she said, well, let's just go, we can drive down to, it was, Tennessee where was it? Let's see. Cleveland, Tennessee. She said, we can drive to Tennessee, down to Cleveland, Tennessee and back in one day. So let's just go visit her. So we visited her it's the week before Thanksgiving, this past November. We went down and spent the day with her and had a real good time with her and her daughter, talking and looking at all her genealogy stuff and whatever. And she died then in February, I believe it was.
Oh, wow.
Before her daughter was going to bring her up here. But then when I talked to her daughter called me after her mother fell and hit her head, and she never did recover from the injury.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, she brought her up here, and she's buried got to be buried at Piney Grove. And that was just a real, it meant a lot to me, because that somebody that had that remote interest, she was an Albright, actually, but never knew any Albrights. And when I went down to visit her, I thought she would be telling me stuff. I thought she had researched Albright, and I might find out some more stuff,
Yeah.
But it turns out she didn't know anything much about Albright family. So I got all this stuff together this paper, family sheets and stuff, and sent a package to her, and she just got it like 2 or 3 days before she fell and hit her head. But anyway, she didn't know anything about the Albright family that much, even though she had come here like 10, maybe it's been 15 years ago now, that she came and I took her up on the hill, and she saw the cemetery and everything. That would have been her grandfather was Uncle Billy.
Yeah.
So what we called Uncle Billy. But anyway, but when Uncle Billy died, which was a strange thing, he was buried by his first wife, and his second wife, who is like Archie's mother, is buried in Piney Grove there by herself. So I don't know.
Yeah.
These strange things happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know. But anyway, but it was good for me it was like affirming for me how important family history really is to people.
Yeah.
The family history is real, and it's a real thing that needs to be explored more than it is. And how, especially, I guess, after you get older, it's more important.
Yeah.
And she was, and she just affirmed that for me. Even all the experiences she'd had in every place she'd lived throughout her life, and she'd never lived in Broadhead, but she wanted to be buried in Broadhead.
Yeah, you had that one connection, and that's it. And well, you're right about the family history, and like you said, some people, they get kind of started a little too late, a little, older, and that stuff starts to kind of. They start to realize
I was always interested, and I absorbed what my grandparents told me, but I just didn't question them like I should have.
Getting those other details and all those things, and sometimes they might tell you loads of stuff, but there might be stuff that they leave out. That for whatever reason. But
if you're young, you don't know what to ask. Really.
Yeah. Well, true. Yeah, that's harder to think about. Well,
I'm old, and back when I was a kid, it's been 90 years ago,
Yeah.
And things have really changed a lot.
Oh yeah.
And like when I was a kid, we didn't visit family. We visited close family, but if they lived as far, like my grandmother Albright, who was a Thompson, her family, she had some brothers. They lived on the other side of Ottawa School Road, out toward the Lincoln County line out there.
Yeah.
But we never did see them very much and didn't know that much about them. And she never went anywhere. She never visited anybody, only just people on the hill. I don't know where she's ever. Well, she went to Eubank to visit a sister-in-law. But I don't think my grandmother was ever probably out of the county.
Wow.
And we didn't know her family because they didn't live right here with us.
Yeah.
But since when I got to researching family history, it turns out that her family is the one that's got the documented ancestry.
Oh yeah.
And it's her family that I'm in DAR. I can't connect that Albright one.
Yeah. So Thompson. So
it's Thompson and Houston. Her mother was a Houston who married a Thompson, and it's some of this Thompson family that has come in here from Tennessee and after the Civil War.
No, there's Thompson in my.
Yeah, there's Thompson in your Charlie Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Thompson in your line.
Yeah, that's what I was. Is that the same as yours?
No,
or different? Okay.
It may be. I don't know if Marion and I have talked about about the Revolutionary War. There's several Thompson men, and I don't know one from the other that were here at the end of the war, and some of them were brothers, and some were like cousins or something else.
Yeah, I know I know she's been doing a book on Thompsons.
Yeah.
But I don't know which.
But there's just so much you just can't get in. It's just hard to.
It's a lot.
But now there's this bukus of stuff that goes back to on the Thompson, and then the Houston, and then the Houston branches out to a lot of other. I could probably have, I don't know how many patriots that in that line, that I don't know about, that I haven't pursued, but it's just unbelievable how much there is to find out, to learn.